People with autism. How would you describe what autism feels like to someone who doesn't have it? Most of what everyone else has said. But I'll add this. Feedback loop. Sometimes things just get stuck in your head. Not just songs or movies, but things you or someone else has said in conversation, which will then be repeated for no apparent reason. I catch myself saying the same things I've already said under my breath. But I'm not trying to understand the what or why of it. I just do it. Beeping hate it when things get stuck. Nothing to do about it either except relax and repeat the exact way that rando said hello in my head for 4 hours straight. Wait. Do I have autism? I was diagnosed with Asperger's as a kid, which is grouped into the autism spectrum. Many sensory triggers, specifically sounds, are amplified for me. It's a blessing and a curse. I have little trouble hearing people, but shouting can be very overstimulating. It's also very difficult for me to explain myself. And I often have a hard time conveying my thoughts, including this post. I'm probably overlooking a whole plethora of other things I do. And then there's the social aspect. Growing up, I was often singled out for not knowing what I'm supposed to do socially. As if it's an unwritten rule I was never told. I can't pick up on subtle hints about how someone's feeling, body language, etc. to save my life. So someone has to be extremely direct in order to tell me what they're going through. It's lost me a lot of friends as a kid. Thankfully, I've met some good people in my college life so far, and all of them have been very understanding with me. TL. Dr. Everyone in the world knows what to do and how to act but you. And you're never told because it's an unwritten rule. I have an autistic friend who described it as everyone else got instructions on how to be a person and I just didn't. This is the best simple description of what it feels like. I find this question very difficult to answer. People often tell me I seem so normal. But it is very hard to describe how much effort I've put in to fit in. I'm going to use this from now on. I think it is the best way to describe it in a simple sentence. I like very specific objects. I quickly develop really weird attachments that not even I can explain. In school, for example, I would always become attached to specific chairs in the auditorium. Or in a classroom even. Any break from that order would throw me in a loop of anxiety that I could hardly escape from. I even remember where they were to this day. Second row from stage. Third seat from left aisle. No one I spoke to could comprehend why I cared. I'm a special ed teacher. And this certain seat is just a fact in my class. Anytime I change the seating chart, I need to take into account the needs of my students with autism. I'll mention some of my other observations. But respectfully, autism is a spectrum and I can't speak for anyone. My students with autism sometimes have a hard time with changes in the routine. Not as severe as the movie Rain Man. But I try to keep things predictable and give advance warnings. However, it's a little tricky. Because for some kids, if I tell them we are doing something different in a couple of hours, they will begin to get ready and anxious way too early. Even a change for the better, like no homework this week, can be agitating. The weeks before vacations can be tense. Sometimes there's a need to be ready for anything, like having an entire pencil box stuffed with carefully sharpened pencils. There's a certain kind of humor that I see a lot, related to the sounds of words. Kind of like puns. But it's only funny to the person. Like the way that the name Matthew sounds like math is hysterically funny somehow. There's a certain stubbornness that can come across as defiance or ego if you don't understand what's going on. As a teacher, I try really hard to get my students to notice how their different behavior may be perceived and how they can communicate what they may need. Your attention to detail, especially with your individual students' needs / likes / dislikes, is really cool. I bet you're a great teacher. Imagine if human sensory had settings. And all of them were at maximum. No matter how hard you try. No matter what you say. You can't make people who don't feel the same truly understand how bad it is. Everyone thinks you're exaggerating or making excuses for yourself. I got wimp a lot growing up. One thing I wish more people knew was how frequently we are excluded from many aspects of society. I never had any friends growing up. So I had a very bizarre childhood of growing up apart from my peers. Where you're a bit odd, people don't feel like they have to treat you with even the most basic level of respect. I've always gone out of my way to be very kind to everyone I've worked with, but the majority of people I've worked with have treated me with open hostility. In one circumstance, I even had a job offer revoked because they discovered my autism during a pre-employment psych exam. When I appealed to their disability rights coordinator, he told me I wasn't qualified because of my autism and that I was like a man in a wheelchair trying to run in the Olympics. Beep those cunts. Being really sensitive and self-conscious around everything. Also having really good acting and mimicking skills in conversations 24/7, otherwise people think you're weird AF. To build on this, there is no turning off and relaxing in a conversation. Every time I'm talking to someone, I feel like I have to choose what I say very carefully. As if I were talking to my boss. Yet, I run through a mental flow chart of appropriate responses and try to make sure I stay on topic and don't talk about one of my fascinations and monopolize things. Also, don't mutter interesting words or pronunciations you heard from someone else under your breath just thinking about it. Also, forced eye contact to appear normal. Like everyone else is in on an inside joke that you don't know. And when you do know it, everyone thinks you don't, so they leave you out of it still. I thought that's what regular life feels like anyway. Is it possible to be autistic and just never know? Yes. It is entirely possible. I wasn't diagnosed till I was 55. I thought it was just me, hadn't even considered I might be on the spectrum till I met someone with Asperger's and they said they thought I had it. Did a bunch of research. Some reading. Went to seminars and heard Temple Grandin speak a couple of times. Had a coworker with a son tell me the same thing. And decided I probably had it. Eventually went to be diagnosed. The doctor talked to me for over 2 hours. And walked out having been diagnosed. The doctor told me I was most definitely on the spectrum. No doubt about it. He also told me I should write a book. Took 5 steps out of the doctor's office and nearly fell. I had to stop for a minute. I got lightheaded and I suddenly felt like a couple 100 pounds lifted off my shoulders in that moment. As to how it feels, I have always felt like I had a really thick veil around me that filtered a lot of stuff out so that life/people/situations came through somewhat garbled and unintelligible. I just do not get people. Sometimes I have to actively think about what they are actually meaning vs what I understand them to be meaning. I have a couple of friends who I go to for translation when I don't get something. And Google and Reddit are some of my best friends. It feels like you're in a play and everyone has the script apart from you. Not my quote, but I saw it somewhere and I resonated with it so much. I am both autistic and a theater kid, and I relate to both the literal and metaphorical sense of this. Curious and honest question. What are your thoughts on improv theater? Sometimes it feels like the world is screaming at me. The feeling is so overwhelming that no matter what I'm doing, no matter how much I may normally enjoy it, the only way to make it stop is to drop everything and run back to the safety of my bedroom. Often I don't even realize that I'm not interpreting a situation differently than most other people. Just because I express things differently and maybe my affect seems flat doesn't mean I don't have emotions or can't feel sympathy. Of course, my flat affect can also signify my deep depression, which, like anxiety, afflicts people with autism spectrum disorders at about 4 times the rate found in non-autistic people. But it definitely doesn't equal a lack of empathy. I can only speak for myself. Everyone is different. Thank you for sharing this and explaining so thoroughly. One of my dearest friends of over a decade often confuses me with the flat affect. But their actions and gestures in life are highly empathetic and generous. I'll remember your comment next time I'm confused in conversation with them, and I'll just relax a bit. 26M. Athletic. Successful career as a welder. Absolutely no idea how to socialize. And no desire to. Completely alone. No friends my age. Especially girls. If I'm with more than 2 other people, I completely shut down, can't process all the information I'm taking in. If I'm lucky enough to get a date, there is never a second, and I don't understand why. I've never been mean to anyone in my life. I work by myself and then I come home and work on my fire truck, which I'm completely obsessed with. I go on vacation by myself. Never anywhere with crowds. Usually some remote fishing spot where I sit by myself all day. I'm the human definition of an island. Also should add huge anxiety issues. Scared of planes, boats, elevators, falling asleep. It goes on. You have an actual fire truck? _car_mod_here/ UTM_source share and UTM_medium web 2x and context 3. If I could do that, it wouldn't have taken them 22 years to diagnose me. Hi. This is off topic and I understand if you don't want to answer. I think that my son is on the spectrum. I've thought this since he was about 2. But due to his strong verbal skills and hitting his milestones early, the doctors did not think there was a reason to diagnose. When he was in kindergarten, I pushed again and was told that he was just on the engineer track and high functioning. So don't worry about labels. I love my son and think he's perfect. I would do anything for him. As an adult who was diagnosed late, do you wish that someone would have diagnosed you earlier, or is it meaningless? Hey. It depends on the person, and my mum is much like you. The problem with me was they kept misunderstanding what I was saying. It took 3 tests to confirm, and only because my occupational therapist was certain I had it. My whole life I wanted answers for why I was the way I am, and it felt great to finally have an answer. The diagnosis didn't change much, except I felt happy to finally know.